I changed my life in 8 weeks, and I'm going to show you how to do the same. Welcome back, and welcome to today's episode. Today, we're talking all about the summer of me. This was a very magical, transformative time in my life where I decided I was sick of being who I was, implemented so many tools I had learned, and transformed into the woman that I had always wanted to be, but never thought I actually would or could be. So this topic has been requested a lot, which is interesting because I feel like I talk about it a lot. I definitely reference it in a lot of my videos, but I guess I get it. I think that what you guys want is an exact breakdown of like what went down. How did you change so much about yourself and about your life in such a short amount of time? So while I've told pieces of the story in my other episodes, today, we're really going deep and getting granular, and I'm going to break down the exact process for you so that you can replicate it as well. I mean, summer is right around the corner, so what better time than now to talk about this? So before we discuss that summer, we have to discuss what came before. And I'm not going to go super into depth here because I've told this tale before. You can look back, especially in the episode I did on how I married my ex, in the first video ever on my podcast, which is from rock bottom to relationship coach. So I told my sad story about how filled with self-loathing I was for such a large chunk of time. But just to catch you up, I went through a really difficult ugly duckling period when I was younger. And when you're in middle school and you're like the duff, the designated ugly fat friend or whatever, which I guess I was in my friend group, you internalize the belief that, okay, I will only be worthy if I'm considered beautiful and if I'm wanted by men. Like that is what determines my worth. This is what goes on in like the brain of a 12-year-old. And that got wired in, and it was something that I didn't really challenge at all. So I completely measured my worth based on how the outside world was responding to me, which I feel like is very common. And so many of us do this, especially women. We've been so conditioned to measure ourselves based on society's standards of what we should be, right? So I very much was living my life like a reptile. You know, I couldn't generate heat from within. I was constantly outsourcing it to the externals. And this led me down a very bad path. Even as time passed on and I did come into myself and I became more attractive, I was getting male attention, it never filled me up. There was always that empty void. And in time, I realized what that empty space was. It was the complete lack of self-worth. I had zero. I had nothing. Self-worth and confidence are different. A lot of people think that they're one and the same, but they're not. Confidence or self-esteem can fluctuate based on external circumstances. You know, you did a good job at work, or you got a lot of fire emojis on a picture you posted on Instagram, and like you're feeling pretty good about yourself. It can fluctuate. Ideally, it shouldn't fluctuate. Ideally, you want these things to be self-sourced. Self-worth is not something that rises and falls with the tides of validation from other people. It is something that just exists. It's not something that you build. It's something that you uncover. And it was something that I had completely lost sight of. Deep down, I very much felt worthless, and I behaved as such. Now, how does that come across in your behavior? For me, and for I'd say the majority of women that I work with, it came across as me going after guys who couldn't really commit, who treated me like crap, who were emotionally broken or emotionally damaged. And that's because like attracts like. And so you will always seek out the familiar. And there was a familiarity with these dark, broken, wounded birds. I wanted to save them, probably. And because I was the one that really needed to be saved. I was saving other people in the way that I'd wish someone had come to save me. But I promise I will not go so far into psychoanalyzing myself. We've done plenty of that. So I was making these very poor choices in relationships. And then when guys would come along who were wonderful and emotionally available and great, like these weren't like nerdy, gross, not that there's anything wrong with nerds, but these weren't gross guys. These were wonderful guys. I was just like icked out majorly. I could not summon an ounce of attraction for them. And it took me a long time to realize that this was a problem. This was a problem because I was only drawn to the ones that were treating me badly. And anytime someone was really nice and genuine, I was just like this is gross. And I was like, how am I ever going to find anybody like this? How am I ever going to find someone if I'm just constantly chasing or running? That's what I was doing, either running from the good guys or chasing after the bad guys. So my 20s were pretty much a hot mess. And I figured that's just what your 20s are like. 20s are a hot mess, and relationships and dating in New York City is a hot mess. But then I was at the end of my 20s. I was 29. And one of my breaking points, I had to have several breaking points. One of them was with the infamous Kevin the Damage case. And I did a whole other episode on him. I think it's the one on if he's not choosing you, stop chasing him, something to that effect. So this was a guy that I went on 2 dates with who dumped me, who was like, I just don't see it. I don't see it, whatever. And I basically chased after him for a year. We lived a few blocks away from each other in the city. We were in the same friend group. So like we crossed paths a lot. I would always try to look really hot. I would always try to win him over. And then we were kind of in, not even a situationship, calling it a situationship would be generous. We were in like a delusionship on my end. We would hook up sometimes. He would fall off the face of the earth and just clearly just didn't want anything. Like, he was attracted to me, but it didn't really go beyond that. And he was also very emotionally avoidant. I mean, this is a long time ago. He's still single to this day. After that, I was like, I can't do this anymore. I can't do this anymore. Like, when is this going to stop? I thought with the passage of time, I would grow up. I would grow out of this, but I didn't. But I was like, no, I'm going to, I'm going to change. I'm going to change. Then there was this guy, we'll call him James. And him and I met on some dating site, but he lived in LA. I was in New York, and we were emailing for a while, and then we had a phone call, which was like 6 hours. And I was like, James is my soulmate. That is it. I hate the phone. I despise the phone. So for me to like be on the phone for 6 hours with someone and actually like want to be there and not be trying to get away, this is a miracle. Him and I went to the same college. We were there at the same time, but we never met. We also lived abroad at the same time, and we were in the same places at the same time. We're living these parallel lives. Then we had another phone call. This one wasn't as long. I think it was like, I don't know, hour and a half, 2 hours. It was a little flat. And I was riding high on the wave of possibility. I was envisioning this bi-coastal life and our cocktail party story when people are like, how'd you meet? And I'm like, well, it's so crazy. We live these parallel lives. And then I get an email from him, and he was like, you've been great, but I'm getting more like friendship vibes from you. We've never even met in person. And this one knocked me sideways. And I was like, I can't believe I did this again. I can't believe that once again, I got too attached to a fantasy, too attached to this idea of like being chosen, of being worthy. And then I was really done. I was done. I was sick of myself. I had enough of myself. If I was in a relationship with myself, this is the point where I would have broken up with me, but I couldn't do that. I was stuck with me. And so I had to make it work. We had to find a way to coexist. I could not be like that anymore. I did not want to be like that anymore. I was done. I was done with that version of myself. Done. And this is step 1 in the process of the summer of me. This is step 1 in any transformation process. You have to be done. You have to decide, I don't want this anymore. I don't want this anymore. I don't want to be like this anymore. I'm finished. And it has to really be that decision. It can't just be, I feel like my husband just went through this. This was actually maybe over a year ago now. He was saying, I need to lose weight. He had like put on some weight, he had like dad belly, and he was like, I need to lose some weight. But then like, he wouldn't really like do anything about it. And then it was like, oh, okay, like I'm sick of this. That's it. Going to the gym, losing some weight. And then he just wouldn't do anything about it. Right. And then finally he like put on his like favorite pants, and they wouldn't close, and his favorite shirt wouldn't close. He was like, that is it. I'm losing weight. And after that, he was in the gym every single day, and he's intermittent fasting, and he got a food scale, and he's weighing his chicken and like eating, he went hardcore, and he did. He looks great. I mean, he lost lots of weight. You need to hit that point of that's enough. Just to backtrack for a second, I think that, the reason this was such a breaking point for me is because I felt like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I get a grip on myself? And the what is wrong with me question is like the most toxic question you can ask yourself. But a lot of the time it leads us in a direction of profound growth. Every time I get on a discovery call with prospective clients, they're always like, what's wrong with me? And I'm like, that's the saddest question to ask. But that really means that you're at that point of like, I've had it. I'm done. Time to change. I just had felt like I had no control over my life. I felt like I had no control over my decisions. I had no control over my reactions. And I didn't understand what was happening at the time. I definitely understand it now. But what was happening was that I was completely being governed by my subconscious. My subconscious was steering the ship and trying to heal the old wounds in the worst possible way. It was trying to heal those old wounds by replaying the same familiar patterns over and over, hoping for a different outcome. Okay. So, getting back to point number one, the first step is you decide, I need to change. That is it. We're changing. You have to want it more than you've ever wanted anything. You have to get to that place. But before we go deeper, let's look a little bit at why it's so hard to change, because this is important. Like, why don't we just say, that's it, I've had enough, I'm changing, I'm losing weight, I'm pursuing this goal, I'm not going to let my attachment style ruin my life anymore. Like, why do we make those decisions, but then we can't follow through? So this is how the cycle, first we're going to talk about what the cycle usually looks like, then we're going to talk about how to fix it, and then we're going to get back into the steps of the summer of me. So the first is you feel unsatisfied or frustrated or a sense of discontent in your life. You're unhappy, and maybe up until now you thought, well, eventually I'll get better, eventually I'll mature, eventually I'll grow out of this. Eventually things will change. You come up with all sorts of reasons and you just think, I'm going to let time do its thing. I don't really have to be an active participant here. Then you hit a breaking point, like mine with James and Kevin and all the breaking points I've had. Something happens that pushes you over the edge. And then you realize, okay, maybe I'm not just going to grow out of this. Like, maybe I have to actually take some action here. Maybe I haven't learned my lesson from the past and now it's time to actually learn. Then you start to take action. You decide something needs to be done. You make a plan. Maybe you join a gym. Maybe you find a therapist. Like, you look up a course, maybe you find someone like me. You're like, oh, like maybe I should join her course. Like maybe I should work with a coach, and you're on your way. But the next stage is the fear and doubt stage. Soon you start to question, do I really need a therapist? Do I really need to be spending this money? Like, can't I just figure this out on my own? Are things really that bad? Or am I just being dramatic? Then the final stage is you rationalize. You start to rationalize why you don't need to change and why everything is fine and you could just stay exactly where you are a little bit longer. And the cycle continues. This is why when you are in phase 2, you just got to grab hold and you got to take action. And maybe we'll do another episode on achieving your goals and how to be motivated and not procrastinate. Let me know if that's something you're interested in. So in order to break this cycle, you have to get radically honest about why you are so afraid to change. Because the reason we self-sabotage is because the self-sabotaging behavior is fulfilling an unconscious need. The truth is, most people don't fear change. They fear what change will demand of them. So here's a few reasons it's so hard to shift, even when you say you want to. The first is that you don't really want it. Sometimes we convince ourselves that we should want it to conform, maybe to please others, maybe to meet certain societal expectations. But maybe deep down, you don't really want it. Maybe you're just not ready yet. Sometimes you have to be ready. You have to be ready. You have to be in the place where you're like, I am ready. And the fact is, one of my favorite Brianna Weiss quotes is your new life is going to cost you your old one. Maybe you're not ready to let go of the old one yet. Number 2 is you don't know what you want. If you are unclear about what you want, you are never going to be inspired to move. You'll just stay stuck in the same limbo, spinning your wheels in the same spot. The more clarity you gain, the more connected you feel to what you actually want, the easier it will be to take that aligned action to get there. Number 3, the dream isn't big enough or you don't believe it's possible. I hear this all the time with my clients, especially when we start working together. They're like, yeah, sure, this has worked for other people. This worked for you. I don't think it's really going to work for me. This is just a major, major mindset block. And this is just your brain playing tricks on you, to be honest. Number 4 is you're letting fear run the show. You've made your fear bigger than you. Maybe you tell yourself, oh, I'm just being realistic here, or now just isn't the right time. Maybe you put everything else first, or you're willing to tolerate long-term pain rather than face temporary discomfort. And I think that was a big part of my problem. I was in a lot of pain going the way I was going, but I didn't want to deal with the discomfort of actually facing myself and doing the inner work. That sounded way scarier to me. And number 5 is you are attached to the problem. A lot of the time we become addicted to our problems and we wonder, like, who would I be without this problem, running my life. Sometimes there's a benefit to staying stuck, and you really have to look deep and figure out what that is. Your ego might be wrapped up in the struggle. Maybe you're attached to that victim role, that role of it's not fair, it's not my fault. Maybe it's easier to live in that space rather than take accountability and take responsibility for how you're showing up in your life. That I was for sure totally seduced by the victim mentality for a long time. There are no good men, all the good ones are taken, it's not fair. Victimhood gives you an excuse to stay exactly where you are. Freedom doesn't come from avoiding the truth, but by owning it and facing it. Okay, so I had the drive. I was in the place of like, I am ready to change. I'm done with the old way. The next step, and this one might be a little bit controversial, but I became my hottest self. And every time I've spoken about the summer of me, this is the part I completely leave out. I feel like this gets misconstrued and it can be a little bit triggering for people. But I'm being honest today, and so we're speaking about this honestly, and that was a big part of it. I became very, very hot. So for like the 7 months leading up to the summer of me, I had been on a weight loss journey. I wasn't happy with what my body looked like, and I was working on losing it. It was like a slow process for me. And the weight loss journey actually kicked off by something that a guy friend said to me. You guys are going to be horrified by this, but I'm actually grateful to him for this. I was talking to a guy friend about how much trouble I was having in dating, relationships. I also really liked this guy who was like super, super hot, super in demand, and he just wasn't into me. I did another episode on him, actually. You know what? I really should thank all these guys who provided all the material for me in my career. I think it's the one about how to know if a guy likes you. Anyway, I really liked him. He wasn't so into me. I'm talking to my guy friend about it, and he was like, look, Sabrina, the fact is you're not thin. And guys like that want a thin girl. He was like, you don't have a bad body. I really like your body. And I wasn't fat by any means. I was a little bit curvy. I wasn't skinny, but he was like, I like your body. Plenty of guys will like your body. But if you're going for guys like that, they want a girl who's thin. Okay, please let's not make this like a bigger thing than it is. That's what he said. And that hit me. And that was one of my big breaking moments that kicked off my weight loss journey. So I was already there. And by the time summer had arrived, I was like this close to my goal weight. And I looked really good. I looked good for me, and I was creating a body that I wanted. And that's going to look different for everyone. So I'm not saying there's one standard. There is a particular way that I like to look, and what I feel like looks best for me, what makes me feel the most confident. And so I was actively working on getting there. Now, that is something that just is rewarding in and of itself, like when you have that goal for yourself and you're achieving it. So my biggest problem, the reason why the weight loss was so slow until then, is because I would be strict during the week, and then I would like let go on the weekends. I was in my 20s. I liked to drink and go out, and everything would get all loosey-goosey on the weekends. So it was like I was losing, but then it was coming back, and it was like a slow process. So that summer I was like, that's it. This is what I want. I want to look this way. I'm going to be strict on the weekends. As soon as I was strict on the weekends, that's when the rest of the weight just fell off. And I mean, I looked great. I looked great. And that really, really helped. My dream was big. It goes back to what I mentioned before. I had a big dream. I wanted to be my hottest self, not for male attention, for me. I wanted to look the way that I wanted to look. So I tightened the reins on my diet. I started exercising more. I started just really taking much better care of myself, like making my hair look good and really taking pride in my skin and dressing the way that like I wanted to look. Also, once I had the body that I wanted, I was no longer using the excuse of like, well, I'll buy new clothes once I'm thin or once I'm at my goal weight. Once I was there, I invested in like a new wardrobe. I was actually gifted a session with a stylist, which was wonderful. I mean, I had to pay for the clothes. I didn't have to pay for the stylist, but she helped me create a whole new look for myself. Granted, I know this isn't like so feasible for people, but that also really helped. All of these things just helped make me feel so good. And it's funny. I mean, all this happened. When was Summer of Me? Summer of Me was 11 years ago, but now I'm kind of like on a similar journey. I mean, I've had 4 kids, and now I'm done having kids, so I want to get back to looking the way that I want to look and being my hottest self at 40, but we'll talk about that another time. Okay, so my advice is decide what the hottest version of you looks like, and of you. Not like, oh, I want to be hot like Kendall Jenner or Bella Hadid or whatever it is. The hottest version for you. Decide what that looks like and make a plan to pursue that. What makes your body look best? What makes you feel your best? How do you want to look? And then plan. And to be honest, like, it's easier than ever to lose weight these days. I mean, you could go the GLP route. Let's just be honest, like GLP-1. I mean, that's there, that exists. If not, hire a nutritionist, hire a health coach. If you want to prioritize this, then make it a priority. Make it a priority. Invest in it. Okay, so let's move on from this. I was hot. I was looking good, but a hot exterior is not going to fix things for you. So we are not just relying on like the hot exterior. That's not enough. The real power of the summer of me was what it did for my interior. So that brings us to number 3, which is the George Costanza approach. I don't know if you guys watch Seinfeld, but there was an episode where George, things were just going wrong in his life. And he was like, obviously every decision I make is wrong. So I'm going to start deciding the opposite. So he starts doing the opposite of what he would normally do. And all of a sudden his entire life turns around. He's at the diner and instead of ordering a tuna salad, he orders the egg salad. And then this beautiful woman is like, oh my God, you just ordered the exact same thing as me. So I decided to take that approach. I needed a new default setting, no more self-destruction. So I made a choice. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to start doing the opposite. If I want to be negative, I'm going to be positive. If I want to binge and eat my feelings, I am going to go to a yoga class. If I want to drink and numb myself out, I'm going to sip green tea and be mindful and slow my breath down. I'm going to process my emotions. I am no longer going to run from my emotions. And I kind of like, in order to set up this new default, that can be a tricky thing because you're so used to being one way. And I had been one way for nearly 30 years at this point. And so I had to reprogram myself to be a completely different way. And the George Costanza approach really helped me get there. I noticed how toxic my patterns were and how toxic my relationship with myself was. And of course, it all started to make sense why I was attracting such toxic relationships, why I was attracting guys who treated me so badly. It's because I treated myself badly. Like, how can I expect anyone to come in and treat me with pure love and kindness and really see the real me and appreciate the real me when I hated the real me, when I was just full of shame and self-loathing? So I've changed all that. I started relating to myself in a whole new way. Number 4, this is the biggest thing, and I say this more than anything to my clients. You must challenge the narrative. We all have a story embedded within us about what things mean, and you might not realize all the ways this story is sabotaging your life. You may not even be aware of the stories that you are holding on to. For example, my most significant story is that I was cheated on by a man that I loved more than anything. It actually turned out he was a narcissist, but this happened when I was 21 years old, and he cheated on me. And not only that, because I would have taken him back, he left me for her. And they had this whirlwind romance that was splashed all over social media. And because I was a masochist, I just couldn't look away. And I adopted and internalized and allowed to become embedded in the depths of my subconscious the belief that it happened because I wasn't good enough. I wasn't pretty enough. I wasn't smart enough. I wasn't interesting enough. And what happened fed into a fear that I already had, a belief that I had even before him, which was just future cemented. And that fear, that belief is, I'm just not good enough. I'm not good enough. And soon enough, people are going to find out. And he found out. And that's why he left me and he upgraded. I didn't challenge that idea at all. That was the conclusion that I came to based on what happened. And that's the story that I went with. So how did that shape my life? Well, in future relationships, anytime I would date a guy that I really liked, there would be an undercurrent of panic that the inevitable was going to happen, that he would discover the truth, that I'm not enough, and that he would leave. I tried to protect myself. And in doing that, I became hypervigilant. I was in this state of like constantly assessing for potential threats. And the prospect of a guy I liked leaving felt very threatening because my self-worth was so dependent on it. So I became very anxious whenever I really liked a guy. Like I definitely leaned into that anxious attached part of me. I definitely had disorganized attachment style, meaning I could be anxiously attached or avoidantly attached. But in those scenarios, the anxiety would just kick into high gear. And I sabotaged relationships, one relationship after the next, because it validated my belief that I wasn't good enough. And I just never challenged that narrative. Now, if I had challenged the narrative, I would have realized that the reason he left me wasn't because I wasn't good enough. It's because he's a narcissist, and a narcissist doesn't care how you feel. They only care about how you make them feel. And he found a better source of ego supply. A narcissist lives his life, his or her life, in pursuit of ego supply. Who is going to be the shiniest mirror to reflect me back to me? That is what they're looking for. You are disposable and expendable. I didn't know this at the time. I didn't. And I didn't really take the time to zoom out and look at what was really happening. And the relationship with the new girl also ended in disaster. And now he's also just alone and miserable and can't have a healthy relationship. But I didn't see that. Instead, I clung to a familiar story for so long because our nervous system loves the familiar. And then, I mean, if we're going to take it back to Kevin the damage case, again, I interpret it, I wasn't good enough. I wasn't good enough. No, maybe he's just too damaged because that man has dated all of Manhattan. All of Manhattan. Even after me, long after I got married, I moved on, he dated a bunch of my friends. I mean, they all asked for permission first. I was like, good luck to you. If you can crack this, like, I'll take my hat off to you. Nobody has. But I didn't see it that way. Instead, I defaulted to the same story. So you need to think about it. You are probably thinking the same thoughts every single day. You're ascribing the same meanings to events. And you probably more or less do the same things every day. You're probably drawn to the same types of relationships, the same situations. It's time to start looking at why that is. It's time to start pushing back, and it's time to start challenging that. Number 5, I developed self-awareness. Self-awareness is very underrated, but unbelievably life-changing. Most of us live in autopilot. Like I said, we repeat the same behaviors, think the same thoughts, fall into the same patterns, and then we wonder why nothing in our life is changing. Until you develop self-awareness, until you can observe your thoughts and reactions in real time, you won't be able to shift anything. You may want to change, but you can't because you don't know where your patterns are coming from. So start small. Start by paying attention to what you're doing and ask yourself why. Like maybe you're scrolling on TikTok instead of working on an important project for work. Why are you doing that? Is it boredom? Is it avoidance? Is it burnout? Are you procrastinating because something scares you? Do you feel like you're not good enough? Do you feel like, what is it? What are you so afraid of? What's driving the behavior? Distractions aren't an enemy. Sometimes they're necessary, but when you're not mindful of them, you can end up your whole life living in a very numbed, distracted state, especially in this day and age with our phones glued to our hands and social media. There's no boredom anymore. Boredom doesn't exist. I mean, I'm old enough to remember the days where you went to the grocery store, you went to the bank, and you had to just wait online and you had to just be with your thoughts. I mean, there was nothing to really do on your little flip phone. Maybe like text someone, but even that was annoying. Remember, we had to scroll through the buttons. It was a pain in the neck. You had to just be with your thoughts. You had to like look around, notice the sounds, notice the smells. Now we're just scroll. Boredom doesn't exist. So we don't know who we are. And you need to make the space to discover who that is. So here are some good questions to ask yourself. What are situations that I keep finding myself in? What thoughts or memories play on repeat? What do I actually value? And what patterns keep showing up in my relationships, my habits, and my choices? You won't be able to create the life you want until you get honest about the one that you're currently living. So again, the question to keep coming back to is, what am I doing and why am I doing it? Number 6, I had a very active social life. So I was always pretty social, but I really kicked it into high gear that summer. Like I don't remember if I mentioned this, but I took a break from dating, or at least I wasn't actively looking for anyone to date. If anybody had come my way, I would have been open to that, but I don't even think anyone really did after the James thing until like the end of that summer when my transformation was complete. Anyway, I did new things. I met new people. I really became a friend magnet. So many people just wanted to be around me, wanted to be my friends. My social calendar was just blowing up because again, like I was feeling good. I was just vibing on a higher level, and people are really drawn to that. I decided to just book the trip, make the plan. No more like, I'll wait to do this till I'm in a relationship, or no more putting my life on hold. No more saying, okay, I'll do this when. Instead, I'm going to do this now. If I want to do this, I'm going to do this now. And I really just enjoyed what it meant to be relatively young with no real obligations. I didn't want to be sad about being single anymore. I wanted to enjoy every benefit there is to being single. And there are many. There are many. I mean, I was living in New York City at the time, and there was just so much to do and so much fun to be had. And I really took advantage of it in every way. And I'm really glad I did because, I mean, I never would have believed this if you told me, but I think a year later, pretty much a year after that summer, I would be married. And then shortly after that, I'd be pregnant with my first baby. And then that was the end of that life, like that came to a close. So I'm so happy that I made the most of my single time. And I still look back on that period of time as like one of the happiest, sweetest, definitely most free that I've ever been in my life. Number 7, I lived my purpose. I was a relationship coach. Yes, even as I was a big disaster and going through all those messes, I was a relationship coach. I was writing about relationships, and I really threw myself into work. I wanted to create amazing work that would really help women not feel the way that I used to feel. So I dedicated myself to my job, and it didn't feel like a job. It really felt like a passion. And this is important. I also pursued other passions. This is so key. I really encourage you to set a meaningful goal for yourself to work towards. For me, it was learning to be a really good cook. And I had no idea how to cook before this. Like I could like scramble an egg and like make pasta. Like that was about it. But I'd always wanted to be a good cook. So me and my roommate, we actually both wanted to be good cooks. We started hosting dinner parties. We started having friends over and we pushed ourselves to learn how to cook and to make everything from scratch. And I some of those nights were so funny, like drinking wine up until 3 a.m, trying to figure out how to get these recipes right. Sometimes things would be disasters and like an hour before the party, we'd have to like run out, get something simple. But like we kept doing it. We put in the reps and we would even do like some practice recipes during the week. And then we became really good. Like I became a really good cook, like so much so that people would like, that's like something I was known for, something I'm still known for. And it's something that I still really, really love to do when I can. People like those like dinner parties became like famous. Like everybody wanted to come. Like people would crash, and that felt really good. It was like, okay, I'm doing something that scares me. Like I'm always very scared of like cooking food for other people, like and it being terrible. It scares me. It's something that I want to do. It's a goal I'm setting for myself. I'm going to challenge myself. So that was another thing that we did a lot of. That just felt amazing. And it was also like when I started dating my husband, like that was something that was very impressive to him, like how good I was at cooking. And finally, number 8, because I could talk about this forever. But number 8 was I decided to be happy. Misery was my default for so long. Misery, there is something so comforting about it when it's all you've known. I was always very confused by like people who are just happy. I'm like, I don't get that. Like, what is that? I was so much more comfortable being miserable. And that was always my default. Like I would try to be happy. I would try. And then like something would happen and I would just slip right back to what felt comfortable and familiar and safe to me. And I decided I didn't want that anymore. And happiness really is a choice. It's not just going to show up at your door one day. It's something that comes as the result of many choices that you make in your life throughout your day. The thoughts that you allow yourself to engage with. You can't control every thought that comes into your head, but you can absolutely control who you give attention to, which thoughts you really engage with, and which you let just pass you by. So I decided I want to be happy. So that's what I did. I feel like that happiness deserves another episode. Guys, I feel like I came up with so many episode ideas within this one episode. Please leave comments, send me an email, and let me know which one we should go with. So that's basically the gist of what I did. And by the end of the summer, I really just, this is so cheesy, so don't judge, but I really just loved myself and liked myself. I liked being with myself. Like I made myself laugh. I made myself happy. I pepped myself up. And I mean, aside from obviously that was the most significant change, but externally, I was just such a freaking man magnet at this point. It was crazy. Guys from left and right and center, guys I'd been friends with for a long time, like they were like, you're magnificent. Like, please let me date you. It was nuts. Of course, then my ex, my high school ex, who had kind of always been in my orbit, we actually ran into each other earlier that summer. He still was like, not really feeling any sort of way about me. And then when I was in Italy posting pictures of myself on my trip, all of a sudden he started interacting with my account, and then he messaged me and we met up, and our first date was like 7 hours long. And by our third date, he knew that he wanted to marry me. And I think the fact that I was so happy with my life at the time was so significant because I was able to be much more detached with him than I had ever been with any other guy, even though there was so much at stake, because I loved my life so much. And being single for a little while longer didn't feel like it would be a punishment. That wasn't something I was afraid of. I was like, fine, if this doesn't work out and I'm single for a little bit longer, like, great. I'm having a blast. I'm having the time of my life. Like, I could deal with that. The biggest shift was that I was no longer clinging to dear life and hoping to be chosen. I was just feeling so good about who I was. And if it didn't work out with him, or if things didn't work out, if I stayed single for a while longer, I was okay with that. And I was no longer, this is the biggest thing, I was no longer afraid that I was going to end up alone. Like, I knew, I didn't have to convince myself. I knew that I had so much going for me and that I was a catch and I would find my person. And when that fear is gone, you could just be. You're not engaged with those worried thoughts in your head anymore. You can just be. Okay, whew. So there it is, the summer of me. And I want you to have the summer of you because you guys resonate with this story, with this concept so much. So I decided to do something fun. We're doing the summer of you. We're going to start in July. This is going to be a 4-week live course where I teach you to become your best selves. I am going to push you. I'm going to kick your ass. I am going to make sure that you are doing exactly what you need to be doing to become the person that you want to be. We're going to meet live on Zoom every week. We're going to have a group chat for support. I'll be in there. We're going to be doing exercises. We're going to be doing challenges. I'm going to give you a step-by-step plan to overhaul your life. It's time to become the person you've always wanted to be. No more waiting, okay? And you don't need to wait till you hit the rock bottom to change. There's going to be challenges, exercises, meditations, homework, reflections, and just an arsenal of tools to help you on your way to attract your dream partner and your dream life. It's possible. I see it all the time with my clients. The course starts July 9th, but I am having an early bird discount that's going to be running until June 15th. The course is free if you are a member of my inner circle. That's only $36 a month. So if you're listening, you're a member of the inner circle, you're like, I want to sign up for this. Don't, because you are already in. Your spot is already guaranteed. So space is limited. Obviously, my inner circle gets priority. Then it's everyone else. This is going to be amazing. I'm so excited to really help you get there. I hope this was helpful. I would love to hear your thoughts. Please leave a review, rate, send me an email, sabrina@sabrinabendori.com. And don't forget to share this episode with some of your friends. I feel like it's so great when everyone can motivate each other to just be your absolute best. All right, until next time, bye.